Hey guys, Anders here. Welcome back to another video. Seeing as there is quite literally absolutely nothing to talk about with Battlefield 2042 because DICE has been on vacation for a month, I figured I would make a video on a topic that I've seen thrown around a ton on Twitter and YouTube, but I don't think I've actually given my 2 cents on. And of course that topic is, have games gotten worse? And I'm gonna narrow this down. Have multiplayer FPS games gotten worse specifically? Because that is where I occupy, right? I love multiplayer FPS games. Played them all the time growing up, still play them today. And the answer in my mind is crystal clear. So before we get into this really packed video, be sure to like the video and of course subscribe to the channel. Over 70% of people that watch my videos are not subscribed. So if you watch the channel regularly, just check if you're subscribed. But of course, join the Discord. Link is in the description. And let's just sort of dive right into things, right? This video is going to be quite sporadic and chaotic, but I'm going to try my best to separate things into sections. As I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I'm going to be talking about multiplayer FPS games, okay? I'm not talking about, single-player games, blah, blah, blah. So growing up, I would say I had the absolute honor and privilege, at least in hindsight, of growing up in the golden era of multiplayer FPS games. We're talking about I Wake Up, Halo Combat Evolved, Halo 2, COD 4, Halo 3, Halo Reach, Call of Duty Black Ops 1, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, Unreal Tournament 2004, Team Fortress 2. You name it, the game was god tier, and it's what people are missing from today's modern games. Now obviously back then, gaming was a lot younger, and the expectations of people were a lot different. And the most important thing to remember was gaming was a lot smaller and there was a lot less money on the line. Obviously there was still a substantial amount of money, but it was certainly less than it is today. And let's not forget, a lot of our favorite franchises like Call of Duty, Halo, Battlefield were a lot less established, and game releases for them mattered a lot more. Now, fast forward to I'd say about the end of Battlefield 1's life cycle, about 6 to 7-ish years ago. Around that period is where I would pinpoint from personal experience where gaming took a pretty steep turn for the worst. In 2018, Battlefield 5 released. It was by far the worst Battlefield game ever. It was actually so bad that midway through the game's life cycle that they canceled support for the game entirely. It was extremely low quality, lacked a ton of things that previous Battlefield games had, and just generally was a pretty despicable addition to the Battlefield franchise. On top of that, DICE's incompetency was at an all-time high. If I remember correctly, they changed the time to kill 3 separate times against the community's wishes, and it just generally seemed like DICE didn't have any idea what was going on, ever. Now, obviously, guys, in 2019, we were saved with Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019, and I say that jokingly because maybe you were saved if you were part of the player base that this game was made for specifically. And since Modern Warfare 2019, every single other Call of Duty has also been specifically made for a specific target audience of players. And you might say, well, that's pretty aggressive. Why would you say that, Anders? It's to increase revenue. Why else would they put skill-based matchmaking into the game? It's to keep the majority of the player base happy and to keep them playing longer so they have more of a chance to spend money on the in-game microtransactions. And while we're at it, let's just dumb down the mechanics in the game to make sure that the players that we've already catered heavily to don't die as often. And my overarching point with this is, it's very obvious that modern multiplayer FPS games are extremely different than they used to be. For instance, with Call of Duty Black Ops 1, when that game released, they weren't worried about catering to a specific group of players. They just released the game and it was Call of Duty Black Ops 1. But now, with these modern FPS games, almost every single game has skill-based matchmaking. That isn't a coincidence. They have data on what it does, and what the data shows is it probably makes them more money. And as a result of that, a lot of these games are just lacking substance, they're lacking depth, they're lacking passion, they're lacking mechanics, and they're lacking what made them great games in the first place. Now that was the sort of Call of Duty / Apex side of things. Let's go over to Battlefield and see what's been going on with Battlefield. Because if you paid attention to really anything about Battlefield 2042, you would know that Battlefield 2042 and BF5 for that matter are just both really bad games. I would say the incompetency displayed by DICE over the past 3 to 4 years is incompetency like we've never seen before in the AAA FPS market. I'll give you a funny example of that. If you remember Firestorm in Battlefield 5, you would know that Firestorm is the sort of BR attempt inside of Battlefield 5. Again, chasing trends rather than making something that people actually want. But it's no matter, because they did it anyway, and Firestorm was a gigantic failure. So you might think, they're definitely not going to do the same thing in Battlefield 2042, right? Wrong. They tried it again in Battlefield 2042 with Hazard Zone, and this time Hazard Zone was so bad that they stopped internally tracking the player numbers 2 weeks after release and canceled every single scheduled update for Hazard Zone. And that is just one of many, many, many examples I could possibly give for the sheer unbelievable incompetence that DICE has displayed with Battlefield over the course of the past 2 titles. And I know someone's typing it right now. Enders, you can't blame DICE for all of this. It's EA as well. Yes, of course it's EA as well, but EA doesn't make the game. That is what a lot of people don't really remember. EA isn't in there controlling every single little detail that went wrong with Battlefield 2042. So as a whole TLDR here, are games worse? Absolutely. They're absolutely worse, and it's because these modern FPS developers have simply lost their way. They're not making FPS games anymore. They're trying to get the most amount of money for the least amount of effort and the least amount of content. And the only possible way this stops is if people stop pre-ordering like a drone as soon as you see the cool marketing trailer that they specifically put together to steal your money and then deliver you garbage. And of course, this goes without saying, but I feel the need to mention it just because I see people saying Battlefield 2042 is now a good game. You have to keep your standards up, because if you don't keep your standards up, you're still going to get delivered this trash every single year. If you keep accepting less and less and less, they're going to keep delivering you less and less and less. They're completely happy with that, especially if they keep making the same amount of money. But I do think there's a potential for it to end fairly soon-ish. It is possible that the next few releases of these games could buck the trend because Modern Warfare 2 is losing players by the day, the player base is increasingly unhappy, and of course, we all know what happened with Battlefield 2042. So maybe, just maybe, this time around, they finally realized, hey, we should probably make a real video game like we used to, and then release it like we used to. Only time will tell, and I guess I can only hope for that being the best case scenario. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it to this point, you're awesome. And let me know your thoughts down below. I'm sure this video's comment section will be very spicy. But, you know, hey, what's life without causing some massive controversy? So, you know, that's completely fine with me. I'll see you guys later.